Hey there, thanks for watching. I'm Ike with Big Tex Ordnance. We're out here at the ranch and we got Andrew today from SureFire. Going to be talking about the RC3, their new line of suppressors from SureFire. So Andrew, what can you tell us about it?
Yeah, so our brand new RC3 launch, we're super excited for it to hit the market. Just backing up a bit, if you're not super familiar with our line of suppressors, we've been making them for 20 years now. We're, most recently well known for the last decade or so for our SOCOM line of suppressors, mainly the SOCOM 556 RC and then RC2. And what we brought to the table was kind of the best fighting suppressor overall in our eyes and in many people's eyes. With suppressors, as you know, there's many metrics to compare them. Obvious is sound, right? That's what a lot of consumers will look at immediately when kind of comparing suppressors. Other than that, there's size, there's weight, there's length, durability, flash performance, back pressure performance. All of these are things to consider when building a suppressor, depending on the application. As far as the military's concern goes, flash is a really, really high concern. Durability is a really, really high concern. Also accuracy, meaning, how much impact shift does it have when you attach it to the firearm? And is that impact shift repeatable if you take it off for maintenance and put it back on? The SOCOM line of suppressors excelled at those things specifically. Sound is kind of middle of the pack as far as performance goes. Military is not super concerned about that. They want it to be, at a certain threshold, good to go, but it needs to be extremely, high performing in flash reduction, specifically first round and subsequent once the suppressor gets hot, and extremely durable. And that's kind of what we've had the holy grail for the last decade or so. In recent times, there's been more of a push for low back pressure for, as we talked about yesterday, for medical reasons and a bunch of other reasons, meaning, the back pressure coming out of a firearm can be unhealthy to breathe. Toxic metals are, a big topic these days. And so reduced back pressure can put less gas out into the face of the operator. So with the RC3, we've kept the previous performance of our SOCOM line of suppressors, meaning it has really, really good first round flash reduction. Even when it gets hot, it continues to perform really well at flash reduction. We've kept the same rough size, weight, shape, and mounting platform, so it still mounts to our SOCOM adapters, but we've reduced the back pressure by 60%.
Oh, wow.
So as I was mentioning, that's a big thing on the health side, but it has many other benefits. So for the firearm, it's gonna get less dirty. It's gonna heat things up less, so your wear and tear on parts is gonna be extended. It's gonna cause less wear and tear than a standard suppressor will. Also shootability, the control of the firearm. You'll notice when we shoot a decent improvement in the recoil impulse of the firearm just with that reduced back pressure. So there's a bunch of benefits. Obviously, it's extremely difficult when you're pushing more gas out the front to control flash. And so that's a pretty in-depth process that took us a long time. We've been working on this thing for 3 years with some really, really smart individuals to kind of crack the code, and we're really excited to launch it.
Awesome. So, like you said, it's backwards compatible with all SOCOM muzzle devices that are out there, right? And what is the specific role that this might excel at that the RC2 does not?
Yeah, so RC2, we're still gonna continue manufacturing and selling it. It's an outstanding suppressor and it's still a really good suppressor to have. Like I mentioned, for those that are shooting a lot, the reduced back pressure benefits I think are gonna be noticed both on the health side and just on it's a more shootable suppressor. The gun's more controllable. You can set up an AR or whatever you're putting it on, but let's just say an AR, to run a RC2 very, very well, right? With you use the right combination of buffer or you're controlling the gas at the gas block. There's ways to make the standard suppressor shoot super, super flat and nice. But like if we're looking at, a unit that's buying a bunch of these and they're not gonna be tuning guns to specific products, right? You wanna throw something, an accessory on it and have it work out of the box. RC2s do, but they might be a little bit gassy, specifically on like a Mark 18. They work really, really good, but they're gonna be a little bit gassy. The RC3, like I mentioned before, less gas in the face, more shootable, a cleaner firearm, more reliable. So overall, just the next degree, the next improvement as far as the suppressors go.
Gotcha. And these are in 556 right now. What other product or line extensions do you have planned for the RC3?
Yeah, so specifically right now, we're definitely gonna do a 7.62 RC3. We're definitely gonna do a 5.56 mini RC3, or the Mini 3 is what it'll be called. Outside of that, it's kind of TBD. Most likely will be a 7.62 Mini 3 as well. That's kind of on the fence, depending on what the market demands. And we may do a couple other calibers as well.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And what kind of timeline do you, if you had to guess, I know it's kind of crystal balling it right now, but if you had to guess, what sort of timeline for those projects are you thinking?
So 762 RC3, we're definitely aiming for Q1 on the earlier side of it. So I'd say February timeframe.
Awesome.
And then Mini 3 probably for 556 Mini 3, realistically middle of the year.
Okay.
Yeah, middle of 2024 to be specific.
So we keep hearing reduced back pressure. What does that mean, and like how do y'all test for that?
Sure. The military or the Department of Defense kind of came up with a little device to help measure that, and that's what everyone's kind of standardized on generally. Basically what it looks like is an aquarium. Imagine an aquarium that the rifle sits in basically a ransom rest or a cradle, and it's remote fired out of the aquarium. The muzzle is sticking out of like a little rubber gasket so that the muzzle's exposed and external to the chamber, but everything else, the firearm's completely encased in this, the top's closed, and it's remote fired. And that way, all of the gas that doesn't come straight out of the muzzle is measured that exits the firearm inside that chamber. There's some Draeger measurement devices that amortize the gas. There's some like squirrel type fans basically that mix it all up to equalize the different areas and then measure the parts per million of toxic metals and gases that are in there. Pretty interesting. An unsuppressed AR is around 120 ppm, if I recall. A SOCOM 556 RC2, like our previous suppressor, is like 500, mid 500s. And then this is about 200.
Oh, wow.
So as far as
60% reduction.
Exactly, yeah. And so it's a noticeable improvement on, you know, not just what's coming back into your face, which is inconvenient, like just not kind of nice. For the most part, for most people, it's not gonna be a health issue on an RC2 because realistically, most people aren't shooting enough. And especially if you're shooting outdoors for the most part, you know, it's not really an issue. But it is nice that you don't have stuff going into your glasses. You don't have to tune a rifle specifically for the suppressor. You don't have to worry about that nearly as much. You'll notice, like, if you go through a day, I'm sure you've shot, you know, many days fully suppressed. And you'll notice if you go through a string of fire and you have half a magazine left when you go to top it off, top of that magazine's often pretty dirty from a standard suppressor. It is drastically cleaner with a low back pressure suppressor when you go to top that magazine off. And that's just kind of like one little glimpse at, hey, this is definitely not kicking nearly as much stuff back into the gun.
So dimensionally speaking, weight, length, width, how does this compare to the RC2?
So yeah, our goal was to keep it the same. You know, relatively, we're pretty compact as far as 556 fighting suppressors go with the SOCOM RC and RC2. So yeah, it's identical as far as weight goes, 17 ounces, length is the same. Only difference in dimensions really is the end. You'll see where it flares out. It got a tad bit wider there, but it's relatively minimal in the overall grand scheme of things.
Okay. And as far as like flash suppression, you know, signature reduction out the muzzle, how does it compare to the RC2?
It's actually slightly better,
oh,
which is crazy.
Wow.
Yeah.
The opposite of what I was thought.
Right. Yeah, no, it was extremely difficult, and that's what took us so long, was we really wanted to crack the code on flash, and it's slightly improved over an RC2.
So as far as like construction of this and like the manufacturing process, you know, we know that some of it's like 3D printed. What other manufacturing processes and what's it made out of?
Yeah, so it's entirely, well, the core suppressor is entirely Inconel. Obviously the locking ring and the latch are not, but the main parts, like, you know, are fully Inconel. If you're not familiar with Inconel, I think a lot of people in the suppressor world are absolutely, but if you're not familiar, it's basically a high temperature alloy. They use it in, you know, in the space industry, they use it in racing. If you look at like Formula 1 exhausts, those things are revving super high. You'll see like a completely glowing set of headers for an entire race. That's Inconel. It's extremely high temperature alloy that can maintain structural integrity when it gets really hot. It's very expensive and it's hard to machine, but it's worth it. So yeah, and as far as processes go, a big chunk of this thing is 3D printed, as you mentioned, but there's also some final machining processes that go on, and then the tube is laser welded to it, so yeah.
Are there any barrel length restrictions on this, full auto rated, stuff like that? What sort of lifespan can you get out of these?
Yeah, they are full auto rated. As far as lifespan, it's really tough to give, and even previously we would typically try to not give a lifespan, just because it depends on how, like a car, how hard are you driving it, right? Like, what are you doing with it? If you're treating it, you know, like a normal training day, and you shoot, you know, relatively normal cadence of fire, we've had many people, units and agencies have suppressors go well over 80,000 rounds, 100,000 rounds. And we expect the same from these. We have some of these units in long-term testing and they've been performing the same. As far as barrel length goes, it's the same that we did with the RC and RC2. Basically, we don't recommend anything shorter than a 10.3, like a Mark 18. You know, shorter guns have problem stabilizing projectiles and you might have problems with a baffle strike. That's why on the RC2 line, we had the SB2. So for like G36Ks and other super short, you know, PDW ARs, the SB can had a little bit wider bore. It's to be determined on if we do that with the RC3 line, meaning a wider bore for those super short guns. But to answer your question, you know, 10.3 and above is what we recommend for the RC3.
So on like my RC2, I know over time it's gotten heavier. You know, carbon builds up in there and it kind of stays on the baffles and stuff. Have y'all tested for that, or have y'all seen anything similar on the RC3?
So we have actually, not for a weight perspective, but just to see if there's clogging issues long term. And we've seen really good performance so far with our long-term testing units, as far as it's building up carbon in a much lesser rate than some of our competitors in the low back pressure suppressor world. And so we're extremely happy with that performance so far. As far as carbon buildup goes on suppressors, you can just, you know, obviously we know the weight of the suppressor when it's a brand new product, and then you can weigh it throughout its life to see where you're at. And then to get that carbon out, you know, I'm sure you're aware there's different solvents or liquids you can put in there. We recommend CLR, letting it soak for at least a day or so, and then taking it and shooting it as soon as you can. Some people use sonic tanks and whatnot. With the CLR and some of the other liquids, you might be, you know, just a little wary that it may discolor the locking ring if you let it touch those anodized components, but it's a really good way to clean those suppressors.
Okay. So as far as decibel reduction on this, is it the same, less, more than the RC2? How does it compare?
It's a little bit louder, about 1.5 dB. It's pretty negligible for the most part, yeah.
Okay, cool. Another question, when you're shooting prone, you know, obviously you're sending all the gas forward. Do you have any notice a lot of kick up from dust and stuff, or grass and whatnot? Yeah,
so comparative to the RC2, you do lose. I mean, obviously you sacrifice some of that dust mitigation. It's still better than a completely open muzzle as far as what you're kicking up below you. But yes, it's slightly more than what the previous line was, just because you're letting more stuff out the front.
Yeah, that makes sense. So let's talk price point. So this is a little bit more than the RC2. Can you give us a little bit of insight into why it's so much more?
Yeah, there's just multiple manufacturing processes. As I mentioned before, our margins didn't change at all compared to the RC or RC2 line. It's extremely expensive materials to begin with, and then the multiple manufacturing processes. Every time you're handling a product that you're making, it gets more expensive and more time consuming. So we have 3D printed components and machine components and welded components on here. So it's just more time consuming, and it's a more expensive product overall. Part of the reason why the RC2 will continue to exist. It's a phenomenal suppressor and significantly more cost effective to manufacture and for the customer. So yeah, it's overall a more expensive suppressor to make.
Can you talk about the SureFire warranty on these in the RC2, and what does that look like?
Yeah, it hasn't changed from our previous warranties. We're kind of known in the industry for having a super solid warranty process. We warranty the products for the lifetime as far as defects of workmanship and materials. So that means if anything fails that was, you know, on our end, then we'll address it, we'll fix it for the lifetime of the product. Obviously wear and tear as it's consumed. It's not like if you completely shoot out a suppressor, you know, 100,000 plus rounds and the baffle sections are really eroded. That's not something that qualifies as a warranty repair. But if you have any issues, we'll always take care of our customers, and we're known to go above and beyond repeatedly to make sure our customers are satisfied.
Well, Andrew, thank you so much for coming down here and taking the time with us to kind of go over the RC3 and kind of compare it and all that. Really appreciate you coming down. And
thank you very much for having me. This has been awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you all for watching, and we will see you next time.